I'll let you know that it is, how can I put it? It's not fully 100% official yet. Cornelius K9 Bundrage, the IBF 154-pound champion, is in the running to fight Miguel Cotto. He is starting to become a front runner. Other names are Jorge Sebastián Heiland, Tureano Johnson, and Gary Shaw Productions they're the WBC Silver champion. You have Jorge Heiland, the WBC #1. So let me put it in perspective for you. You got Miguel Cotto, the WBC champion. You have Gennady Golovkin, who's the WBC interim and mandatory. He has to get a WBC title shot before the end of the year. Then you have Tureano Johnson, who's the WBC Silver, new basically WBC Silver, because when Martin Murray took on Gennady Golovkin, it was for the WBC Interim and the WBC Silver, basically. But basically now, the WBC Silver belongs to Tureano Johnson, which he was handed by Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC himself, on that Rock Nation card. I believe that was back in November. So then after that, you have the next #1 guy in that division. This is at 160 pounds, remember. You have Jorge Sebastián Heiland, who's the #1. Now, rumors started circulating, and plus it makes perfect sense if you look at it on paper. Rumors started circulating that Cotto was going to be taking on Heiland, or strong chance that Cotto versus Heiland in Madison Square Garden, June 6, 2015 was going to happen. And the reason why is Heiland is managed by the same manager. I always forget how to pronounce his name. Gabby, not even gonna mess his name up, but I'll learn it. I'm getting better, and I'll have an exact pronunciation for probably when I'm meeting, because I'm looking to go to Madison Square Garden myself and cover the Miguel Cotto fight, June 6, 2015, whoever it is he's going to be fighting. T-Street Controversy will be there. Press conference, post-fight press conference, weigh-in, fighter footage, workouts, etc., etc. Here's the thing. Miguel Cotto versus Jorge Heiland was gaining steam because they're managed by the same manager. Also, it makes sense by the WBC, but basically Tureano Johnson would be getting skipped over. So Gary Shaw Productions and Tureano Johnson are now lobbying for the WBC to make Heiland versus Tureano Johnson, because fans feel, including myself, Tureano Johnson at 160 pounds would be a tough fight for Miguel Cotto, even though Tureano Johnson got stopped by controversy a little bit, but Tureano Johnson turned his back, in my opinion. You got to go back and watch the fight to understand what I'm saying. Tureano Johnson was defeating Curtis Stevens before Hassan Ndam, but basically, the way the fight ended, Curtis Stevens stopped him and Tureano Johnson turned his back. It was kind of, a weird situation. But long story short, Tureano Johnson has a better chance, in my opinion, against Cotto than Heiland. But unless you know who these fighters are, you're going to have a hard time understanding. What I'm saying is, those are two credible fights for Cotto, who just won the WBC title against a handicap. Yes, a handicap, Sergio Martinez, and coming back to fight one of those two guys who's highly ranked by the WBC gives me more feeling that, okay, all right, he's fighting a guy he's fighting a full 160 pounder, ranked high, #1 and the silver champion in the WBC if he fights one of them. But it was, like I said, is more looking likely to be Heiland or Bundrage. But to not confuse you, Tureano Johnson wants to fight Heiland, so Heiland doesn't leapfrog him and get that big WBC title shot. So basically, they want the WBC to order, and maybe Cotto and his team got word of it, that the WBC may be ordering Tureano Johnson versus Heiland to get the winner of Cotto versus Golovkin. But like I said, I would feel more confident that Cotto's going to stay at 160 and not duck Golovkin if he fights a Heiland or a Johnson, but more likely Heiland. Because if that happens and I feel, oh, okay, he's fighting a WBC guy, he's fighting a full 160 guy, he's getting ready for Golovkin at the end of the year. That would make sense to me, right? And a lot of fans feel that Cotto does not want to fight Golovkin because Cotto can lose. Cotto has a chance to win. It's not that he can't win, it's just that he's small. So look at it like this. Cotto will be able to hit Golovkin. We've said, even with the Martin Murray fight, we've said that, well, if you got something to hit Golovkin win, you can win. If you factor in weight, if they decide to bring Golovkin down to 156 pounds, Cotto will be the faster boxer, and also the weight will be more on an even playing field. And even though Golovkin's been talking all this, I will move to 154 and all that for the right fight, and I will fight at a catch weight, whatever the case may be. We really don't know, and you got to go from history. Of course, a fighter will say that, but we don't know how they look at that weight. So I feel it wouldn't, I wouldn't penalize Golovkin. I wouldn't penalize Cotto if they said, all right, well, the Golovkin fight is going to be at some shit like 156 or 157. I wouldn't be mad because Golovkin's been saying that he could fight at 154, and he seems like a guy who's in good enough shape, and takes care of himself to fight at 154. He's not a guy that's rehydrating 15 or 20 pounds and all that, but fans feel that for some reason Cotto just doesn't want to take that risk at this point in his career. I feel if he fights Heiland or Tureano Johnson or someone ranked in the WBC outside of Cornelius K9 Bundrage, then I feel that he may be going after Golovkin next. He can beat Golovkin, and he's just going to have to use a lot of movement. And remember, Cotto being the smaller guy, he may be the smaller guy, but he's going to be the faster guy. He's one of the faster fighters. If you rank just 160 pounds, he's fast at that weight, coming from the smaller divisions. So he has a lot of things to go his way. It's just all about how his face would hold up fighting Golovkin. Simple as that. And Heiland is no joke. So let's talk about the other end of things. You may hear of Cotto of maybe Anthony Mundine, and what that would do is, if Cotto was to fight Anthony Mundine, the winner of that will be the mandatory for Floyd Mayweather's WBC title. The WBC has been making their mandatories, and after Mayweather versus Pacquiao was over, the WBC is after Floyd Mayweather's belts, because it's like, now it's time to start paying your dues and fighting who you're supposed to be fighting. So if Cotto was to fight Mundine, Cotto beats Mundine, he'll get that big Floyd Mayweather fight, and then if Mundine beats Cotto, if he gets that fight, we don't know who he's fighting yet, that'll give him a lot more, put it this way. You know how people who fight Floyd Mayweather, they're always coming off of like a big high-profile fight, and then a lot of people wouldn't expect the Mundine to beat Cotto, but basically he would have just enough fire, the fire that he would need to get fans to support him fighting Mayweather. But when it comes to Cotto, if he was to beat Mundine, then he would be mandatory. He would have that WBC championship, and he would have the WBC champion. No, he would have the WBC championship at 160 with Golovkin right there is the mandatory. Then he would have the WBC Silver, which would make him mandatory for Floyd Mayweather. And either way, and then right there, he would be able to leverage, well, who do you want me to fight, Golovkin or Mayweather? As far as the fans are concerned, especially if Floyd Mayweather wins against Manny Pacquiao. So, like I said, it all depends on what he wants to do. Now, if he fights Bundrage, in my opinion, that's going to make me think that, oh yeah, he wants to stay at 154 pounds for going after that title, because now you're in another organization, in the IBF, where you have to defend your titles. They will make you fight or they will strip you. And then one of the mandatories in that 154 pound division is, if I'm correct, one of the Charlo brothers. And if you feel that he can beat one of the Charlos, then hey, but we will find out in the next couple of weeks. It's a very, 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 very deep situation. I could spend literally like a few hours talking about it. But if you look at a WBC is set up in the IBF, and if you look at who's ranked number 1 and 2, and who's the silver champion and the interim champion in IBF, in WBC, IBF just has one belt, which is good. You'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So there are ways for Cotto to go. He can go the Golovkin route. He can go that IBF, 154 pound route, where basically it's like, well, what are you doing? He can go that Anthony Mundine route, and that will lead him right to Mayweather if he wins, and if he fights Heiland or Tureano Johnson, most likely, in my opinion, Heiland. And here's the thing. Tureano Johnson is a Gary Shaw Productions fighter. Tureano Johnson, just a couple of months ago, was a Rock Nation and Gary Shaw Productions fighter. So we don't know yet, even though they split, and they had a happy split, and I've had an interview with Gary Shaw. We don't know how their working relationship is, but I completely understand where Tureano Johnson is coming from, because the WBC, if you've been making all these mandatories, then I'm thinking like, well, how you going to have Cotto fight him and give him a shot? And then what about me? I won, So, I am T-Street Controversy. This is T-Street. And it's weird how Heiland got to be WBC number 1, too. You know, it's weird how that happened. But I'm T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live on RealCombatMedia.com. I cover every single major fight live. So whoever Cotto is going to be fighting on June the 6th, I am going to be in the building as media, working my ass off. And then we all know what's happening the month before that. But on RealCombatMedia.com, we're doing a boxing poll for Mayweather versus Pacquiao. The link is right down below in the description box, right on the home page. Mayweather by decision, Pacquiao by decision, Mayweather by KO, Pacquiao by KO, TKO for both fighters. I am T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live. Please subscribe.